Hey guys. So, it's almost Halloween. This Saturday is my birthday, and I haven't posted on here for a little bit, but I was laying down getting ready to take a nap. The grandbaby is napping, and when she gets up, we're going to get dressed and do pumpkin carving and fall things. And I received a message from a tech that worked for me when I worked at a mental hospital, and a lot of things started coming back. I started remembering some of the odd and paranormal kind of things that we had experienced together, and I wanted to do my first story time. I wanted to share with you guys. So, I worked at a mental hospital in Kentucky for a little over a year. It was several years ago that I worked there, but the place where I worked, I don't know if I can say their name, so I'm just not going to. I mean, I'm sure you can kind of figure it out if you watch the entire story time. But okay, first, let me apologize for how I look. I literally woke up and started drinking coffee, and things started to move throughout the day. And then I was like, oh, I'm not going to get dressed. I'm just going to hop back in bed and have a little nap. I just finished working several 12-hour evening shifts for my job, and was going to nap while the baby was napping. But I got reminded of a few things that had happened, and there was a lot that happened that was paranormal while I worked there. The place where I worked was originally a hospital that back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, people did not understand mental illness, nor did they understand other types of disorders like when their child was born with mental retardation or Down syndrome, things like that. They would take their babies and literally drop them off on the front porch of this hospital that I worked at. At one point in time, it was a working farm, and the people that lived there would work the fields, and they had a laundry service for the area where this hospital was. And it was all inclusive. It was a huge multi-acre establishment, and they had their own, of course, medical facility there. They had their own kitchen. They would try to teach some of the children as they started to grow. They would teach them how to run things in the kitchen, and you basically got to live there for free. It was a state-run facility, and you earned your keep and your room and board by working. So everyone had a different area that they worked in. When I first started working there, I did not know the history. I knew that I was immensely drawn to this place. When you pull up the front of the hospital, still today looks like an early 1900 hospital, with this grand staircase that goes up to this massive porch that has these columns, and the front doors are just enormous, and big wooden doors with sculptures on the front. And when you go in, there are spiral staircases that are encased in like fencing, and that'll have to be another story time when I go into another longer version of the history of this place, and I find out if I can actually, like, I think I can say the name. I think I can explain. I mean, it's just a historical place. But I wanted to talk today on my story time about I want to focus on one paranormal experience that I had with a tech that worked for me. So, the original hospital is huge, and it's in the front of the establishment. And then after a tuberculosis outbreak, they had another building built out back that had multiple wings and several floors. And each floor, when you go into it, you lock the door behind you, then you go through another door. So there's like a little entryway, and both doors are locked if you're in that area, and then you unlock the doors one by one. and go into them. And that was where the tuberculosis patients were originally. It was so that part of the building originally was one story, and it was built like a T almost. And then later on they built on and up to this part of the hospital. They turned that portion of the hospital eventually into a long-term Alzheimer's and long-term care facility for the aged. And then it progressed into a nursing home, that portion of it. And then you still have the original hospital up front. So I worked in the nursing home building, is what we called it. In the back, it was called the nursing home. At one point in time, this building, when it was first multi-leveled, the first floor was for the aged and the debilitated. The second floor was used for the criminally insane and the non-violent offenders. Back then, mental illness was not understood, and so they just locked them away. And the third floor was for the violently criminally insane, and the rooms on the third floor were actually built like jail cells, and they had sliding jail doors with a little tray insert, and it kind of went around the perimeter of the outer portion of the building, and then on the inside of the third floor, the inner portion of that floor, there was a medical room where they actually completed shock therapy treatments for the criminally insane that were violent on that third floor. They would also house prisoners there that were accused of murder, mass murder. Like there were all these different types of people that were housed in this third floor. So through the progression of time, this third floor eventually became the laundry facility. And of course, the jail cells were still there, but they were used for storage. And when I first started working there, I was given a tour of the building, and we went up to that third floor. And there's a very heavy, dark feeling about that floor. And the history is explained to you a little bit when you get a